So if I go like this, ready? Down. Good girl. One click, and then I'm gonna feed on the mat. 1, 2, 3, a bunch. Then I'm gonna get up till she gets up. Good girl. Then I'm gonna do it again. Down. Good job. On the mat, not in the mouth, for this exercise. So now I'm clarifying it. I want your body on this mat, and I want you to stay down until I get up. Good puppy. So I would do that 1 or 2 more times, but I'm fast forwarding for the sake of time. Now, the final business is when I sit down, I want you to lay down. So watch this dog. Oh, what a perfect angel. Oh, watch it again. Good girl. And then I slow down the feeding. I want her to really understand. I want you to stay down there. So if you're on the couch, you're really going to sit back now and relax. You missed that completely. You smile at them, you talk to them, you touch them. You want this down to be super resilient. That when you're here and I'm seated, I want you down here. Good. So what the cue becomes, you still always have the word and the finger. That's just down, okay? This is, they learn in like pictures. So here's one picture. Here's another picture. When I do this, it means lay down. Beautiful. I'm a good teacher. I love when people go, my dog is so smart. And I'm like, no, I'm a good dog trainer. They're all smart. Your dog is so smart. All right. So when you go home, go ahead and cue it. Sit down on your couch and do the food thing. Go ahead and start all over, sitting 3 times food, 3 times no food, 3 times pointing, work your way up until you feel like this dog knows it. And then just sit down and just sit there. And when the dog lays down, feed it. And then never again for sitting are you going to cue it. You are cueing it when your butt hits the furniture, okay? Now you can still ask the dog to lay down anytime you want to, but this is really nice. So I master one seat at a time, usually the couch. And in my world, I would say get one more than any other so that you can use it when guests come over. They come in the house, you sit down, your dogs be like, oh yeah, we had a lot of reinforcement sitting here, the owners asked me to sit. And then they don't bother your guests if you do this enough. But then you take it to your dining room table where you eat. You put the dog's food in a bowl in front of you, you sit down, you look at the ground, when it lays down, you start feeding it. You do that until it's 100%. So the dog basically, when you're at the dinner table, it lays down. Then you take it to your counters if you have stools or your patio or wherever, and basically you want the dog to know this. You don't have to. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to cue it. We're done. You can go anywhere else you want in the house. But if you want anything from me and I'm seated, you better lay down. Okay? So that means you can intermittently reinforce it. So once the dog lays down automatically, wherever you sit down, that's when I would go, you know what, you're such a good dog. Come on up. Then I would invite it up, because now I'm going to have a calm dog who has been heavily reinforced for the floor, so that if I ask it to get down, it's not going to mind. Then I would say, oh, you're such a good dog. I would pet it. I would get up and get a toy and play with it. I would reinforce it multiple different ways throughout its lifetime. But basically what I would say is when I'm seated, the only way to get my attention is to lay down, but I don't owe it to you. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, the food thing is like a pyramid. Heavy, much heavier than you realize. You must feed the behavior that you want. Strengthen it to crazy good. Then go, it's pretty good, right? Then we start to bring the rewards down. And less, and less, and less, and less. So that means you have to lay down longer to get anything. You have to lay down in front of multiple people to get anything. You have to lay down during the entire meal to get one bite at the end. All right, and you really do, most people do not take that staircase pattern, that pyramid pattern, but you need to in order to keep the behavior without constantly feeding it. Get it? So now, these mats are just sort of an additional thought. You don't need a mat, you just need to sit and pay them when they lay down. But if you train them that the mat means down, I like to use this in my kitchen. Because I'm standing, I don't want the dog sitting in front of me everywhere I go in the kitchen. So I'll go in the kitchen and I'll lay the mat down and I'll train the dog to stay on the mat and I'll walk away and I'll come back and I'll feed it on the mat. So the cue's the mat. It's also for down. And then I'll put food on the counter and I'll walk away and I'll go, do you want to try and get that from the counters? And if the dog does anything, if the dog lays down, sure, I'll get you a bite. Take it from the counter, bring it right to the dog. And so the dog's learning, not that you can't have stuff, because that's crazy, you want to give them stuff, but how do I get things in my house? How do I get my owner's attention when she's standing? I sit down. How do I get my owner's attention when she's seated? I lay down. How do I get food from the counter when my person's cooking? I lay on my mat. So it's not about telling the dog, no, it's about telling the dog how. How does the world work? Because they're always going to want the food, always. But whatever you pay them for, what you're putting in their mouth when they're doing something is what you're training. Does that make sense? It's a lot in one little class.